In this video we are going to take a closer look at the July Deathwatch tournament results, which brought the first GT win for our faction in a very long time. The tournaments covered are the Geelong 40k Town Open, the Viking Games GT, the GongHammer GT, the Best in the East Midlands, as well as the Lone Star Open. Over the course of the video, we will go through all the relevant results and lists in an attempt to find out how the Deathwatch is doing with the new War Zone Nephilim rules and points changes. Yeah, I realize that I sort of spoiled it already at this point. For the final part, I will offer my personal conclusions and a quick wrap up.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer, and I will be guiding you through this video.
Jumping right into the first tournament, the Geelong 40k Town Open, an event featuring 57 players over 5 rounds that took place early July and was still played by the old War Zone Nephilim rules. Nonetheless, when I saw the Deathwatch list being played at this event, I knew I just had to bring it up anyway. Here we have Adrian Sharrock on rank 19, going 3-2, playing the Deathwatch Army of Renown. His matchups were round 1 a win against Tau, round 2 a loss against Custodes, round 3 a win against the Clowns, round 4 a win against Necrons, and round 5 a loss against Space Wolf successors. Looking at his list, with the old Nachmund rules, he had of course far more starting CP, which he heavily invested pre-game as was common enough. For HQs, he has the classic trio with the jump back captain with optimized priority and the beacon, then a Primarius librarian with the tomb, as well as a watchmaster with adept of the codex. Then, as promised, he rocked a fairly epic kill team composition with a whole 4 Indomitor kill teams. One with Flamestorm Aggressors, one with Boltstorm Aggressors, one with Eradicators, and one with the good old Plasma Inceptors. On that last one, he also ran Iron Resolve for that extra tanky heavy Intercessor Sergeant. To round his beefy boys list up, he also brought the Primaris Chief Apothecary with Selfless Healer. All in all, this is a fairly epic list, and I think for War Zone Nephilim this was clearly the way to go when it comes to running 4 Indomitor kill teams. Now with War Zone Nephilim, however, I think aside from having to drop some relics and traits, he would also be lacking the mobility and forward deployment option from a Spectre's kill team that is needed to play the missions well. On the other hand, I think Indomitors and Optimized Priority are still great picks, as we will see in the next tournament, though perhaps dropping down to 3 of them as the max, and taking a Spectre's kill team instead is the way to go forward for these kinds of lists. Moving on to the second tournament, the Viking Games GT, an event with 38 players over 5 rounds. Here we have Mikael Klangeby once more, who finally managed a big breakthrough, winning the tournament with the Deathwatch Army of Renown, going 5-0. Back in May, Mikael already went 4-1 at the Games of Westeros, and now the new War Zone Nephilim rules clearly seem to have worked in his favor. Mikael did a full tournament coverage on his channel, which I linked in the description. For his matchups, he faced White Scars, Chaos Knights, Death Guard, Imperial Knights and Tau, certainly no easy matchups there. Looking at his list, he made several interesting changes when compared to his previous iteration. Starting at 2 CP, for HQs, he brought the Librarian in Phobos armor with Lore of Deceit, the Primaris Chaplain on bike with the beacon and optimized priority, as well as the Watchmaster. This last one is a new addition and replaces the Xenophage/Captain he previously played. For his kill teams, he still rocked the double Indomitors, but one now has 5 Bolter Inceptors for the extra AP while giving up the close combat capabilities of the Aggressors, and the other one still has the Flamestorm Aggressors as before. He then brought 2 of his signature Klangeby style Proteus kill teams, aka the Costello 2.0 iteration. Last but not least, he brought the Spectre's kill team now rocking 5 Last Fusil Eliminators, which I think is an absolute must-have in War Zone Nephilim, especially when you combine it with Lord of Deceit. Overall, I think that Mikael has found a great way to balance pre-game CP versus starting CP, focusing on being able to do actions and still shoot, and the potential redeploying of his Spectre's kill team, but then still keeping enough CP to be able to use Specialism Extremis when going first. While 2 starting CP strikes me as pretty reasonable, I also think that we might dare going as low as 1, given that the game is more likely to settle with more defensive first turns nowadays. Anyway, great list overall with sensible adjustments, and once more, congratulations to Mikael for his amazing win. Moving on to the third tournament, the GongHammer GT, an event featuring 72 players over 5 rounds. Here we have Michael Duke on rank 34, going 2-1-2 with the Army of Renown. His matchups were wins against Tau and Craftworlds, followed by 2 losses against Admech and Orcs, and then for the final game a draw against Dark Angels. What stands out with his list is that it is one of the more rarely seen variants with 5 kill teams plus the Chief Apothecary. In order to do this, he went light on the HQs, with the Xenophage/Captain and the Primaris Chaplain on bike with the Beacon. For troops, he then has double Indomitor kill teams, one with Eradicators and a single Inceptor, and the other one with Boltstorm Aggressors. He then has a comparably cheap Proteus kill team with Shotgun Wets, and 4 veteran bikers with Power Swords, paired with a single Van Wet, in order to give them the infantry keyword. The second Proteus kill team then has a mix of frag cannons, a single Cyclone missile launcher, a black shield and some wets. He then also has a Spectre's kill team with 5 sniper eliminators and the mentioned Chief Apothecary. Overall, as I know only too well from my own experience, it is difficult to balance the points for running 5 kill teams and the Apothecary, and I would say that the majority of the kill teams are decently done, though I would personally have made a Klangeby style kill team out of that second one with the frag cannons and upgraded the eliminators to 3 Las Fusiles. In addition to this, I think when not running the plasma loadout, I would also drop the Captain and run with the Librarian instead. The latter strikes me as more beneficial when you have to stick with 2 HQs only. Anyway, this is certainly something to take inspiration from when trying for a 5 kill team plus Apothecary style of list. Moving on to the fourth tournament, the Best in the East Midlands, an event featuring 55 players over 6 rounds. Here we have a single Deathwatch player, Joe Waddock, going 5-1 with the Army of Renown and ending on an amazing rank 6. His matchups were round 1 against Genestealer Cults, his only loss, followed by 5 wins against Necrons, Dark Angels, Drukhari, Death Guard and the Sisters of Battle. For his list, he played an almost identical copy to that of Mikael Klangeby, but with a few sensible picks that Mikael also to some extent discussed during his own tournament coverage. First of all, by moving the Lord of Deceit Warlord trait to the Sergeant, he gains an additional wound on that model, and you technically save 5 points by not having to run the Phobos Librarian, though personally I do like that he gets Camo Cloak and Concealed Positions. Furthermore, he also dropped the Teleport Homers and the Storm Shield on the Proteus kill teams, ultimately allowing him to go with 5 Boltstorm Aggressors over the Flamer variants that Mikael has been playing. Nothing further to add here that has not been said about the original list already, but overall, great weeks and my congratulations to the great result. Then moving on to the fifth and final tournament, the Lone Star Open, a large event featuring 207 players over 6 rounds. There was a Deathwatch player going 5-1 at this tournament, with the dropout heavy Army of Renown list. As some of you might already know, this list and some major play errors sparked discussions on both the Deathwatch Reddit as well as the Deathwatch Discord. I am not here to call out the player or discuss the list itself, but instead want to take the opportunity to talk about the extra responsibility we Deathwatch players have when it comes to our faction, which is heavily underrepresented, gets very little attention from GW itself. Just think of all the unanswered rules questions that need an FAQ and what that means when playing competitively. First of all, I think it is fair to say that when someone is playing a popular faction with a popular meta list, and they were to do major play errors at a tournament, it would not be long until someone would correct them, simply because an opponent might have had a lot of experience playing against that faction in the past. But as we are playing an underrepresented faction with a lot of special rules, this is far less likely to happen. As a matter of fact, I have found myself in a situation plenty of times where I had to back up one of our rules simply because it sounded far too unlikely for an opponent who had never played Deathwatch before, and over the comparably short time I have been running this channel, I have had plenty of people messaging me with this exact same problem. As I advise on multiple occasions, always have your rules handy to back up what we can uniquely do with our faction, but I think what we can also learn from this episode is to make sure that we are getting our own rules right, as we are less likely to get corrected over misplays. When in doubt about rules interactions, the Deathwatch Discord or Reddit are great places to ask for advice, or you can also of course drop a comment on one of my videos or message me directly, and I'll be happy to assist with clearing things up as best as I can. In addition to this, make sure to always play with the most updated rules, aka check Warhammer community for the most recent FAQs, and keep in mind that our Army of Renown rules are in the War Zone Octarius FAQ separate from the supplement, and then of course the Balance Data Slate and the Monitorum Field Manual, which are also available from there for free. Finally, always keep Battlescribe updated, though it is important to keep in mind that the information there is not always accurate either, especially when major rules or points updates have just been freshly released. On my channel, I always try to cover any relevant changes that affect us in one way or another. Anyway, most likely not the kind of tournament coverage you expected, but I felt that it had to be said anyway in the light of this recent event. All in all, with the other tournaments in mind, it is of course fantastic to see that Deathwatch finally won a tournament again, and that competitive lists such as the one run by Mikael Klangeby and further adapted by Joe Waddock have transitioned well into War Zone Nephilim. As I may have said on one or the other occasion already, but I don't think that War Zone Nephilim has been overly kind with our secondaries in the cut in CP. Given the overall state of Space Marines, it is great to see that Deathwatch can still compete well enough, even against more recent and far more powerful codex releases. All my personal bias aside, the Spectre's kill team plays fantastic into the new missions, and I think the Infiltrator, Helix and Last Fossil Eliminator setup can most definitely be considered as auto-include at this point. I think the big takeaway here is also that if you're going with Lord of Deceit, if you are giving it on the Infiltrator Sergeant instead of an HQ, such as the Librarian, you are potentially gaining an extra wound and don't have to depend on a more expensive Phobos version of that HQ, unless you wanted the latter anyway. Furthermore, the Indomitor kill teams remain a staple of competitive lists, with the most successful lists even doubling up on them, which is a great development given the history of this kill team. The big takeaway here is running Bolter Inceptors with the extra AP as an alternative to the Boltstorm Aggressors, though I think this kind of change may depend on your local meta and the rest of the list. For instance, when only going with a single Indomitor, I think I would personally keep the Aggressors for their close combat capabilities. But anyway, speaking of close combat capabilities, the Proteus kill team remains the primary pick for that role, and the 2.0 iteration of what used to be the Costello style kill team is the living proof that Deathwatch simply does firstborns best. Then lastly, pure tournament results and lists aside, a friendly reminder that we are indeed a niche faction, and even seasoned players may not have had a great many games against us, and as a result, it is very important that we try to stay on top of our own rules as much as it is possible. I am aware that this is easier said than done. Aside from our complex supplement, we have a bunch of extra rules, FAQs and the sort, but nonetheless, I think we Deathwatch players are also fortunate to have great online communities available that can help out with all sorts of questions. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at Deathwatch July tournament results, including the Geelong 40k Town Open, the Viking Games GT, the GongHammer GT, the best in the East Midlands, as well as the Lone Star Open. What stands out here is of course Mikael Klangeby winning the Viking Games GT with the Deathwatch Army of Renown, bringing along a great list that he has been refining over these past few months. Following not far behind, Joe Waddock used a slightly adjusted version of that list to go 5-1 at the best in the East Midlands, ending up on rank 6. I highly recommend checking out Mikael Klangeby's own tournament coverage, where he covers his list in great detail and also speaks about several of the adjustments that then Joe Waddock put into good practice. Furthermore, we do play a rather complicated faction, and there are relatively few Deathwatch players. As a result, rules errors and misplays can sneak into tournaments without being discovered until later, as happened during the Lone Star Open. As good an opportunity as any for a friendly reminder to stay updated on the rules and using our friendly online community resources to clear any potential misunderstandings of rules and/or questions in general. So that's it for the Deathwatch July tournament results and our first tournament win in a very long time. What do you guys think about these particular lists, and do you think that the Kill Team Strike Force has any chance to win even more tournaments in the new War Zone Nephilim setting? What kind of changes are you planning for your own lists? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.